everybody. Welcome back to Capital Ideas. I'm Nick Morgan, founder of ICAN, Investor Choice Advocates Network, and co-host of this podcast, along with Darrell Albright, who we'll hear from in a minute. Capital Ideas is designed to celebrate the disruptors and the innovators in the world who make our lives better, and the capital markets that sort of make it all work.
Thank you, Nick. I'm excited to be here. This is Darrell Albright, and as Nick said, co-host of Capital Ideas and also proud board member of ICAN. And today, please join us in welcoming George Kushner to the show. George is the founder and CEO of H2cryptO, the next generation cryptocurrency exchange. George, I love what you're doing, and I thought that maybe you could start. Well, first, maybe you want to introduce. Why don't you introduce first so that people know, and then we'll jump into the questions.
Sure. Introduce myself, the company, or both?
Yeah, the company, because you're doing some great stuff.
So H2cryptO is, as Dara just mentioned, the next generation cryptocurrency exchange. And our focus is to be the first exchange that truly has the alignment of client interest at heart. And we are doing things very differently than the majority of exchanges. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is make it much more akin to a TradFi-esque bank or brokerage with regards to the client service feel. In addition to that, we're also trying to make it more safe, more secure, more trustworthy, if you will. And this is really stemming from my almost 3 decades coming out of the TradFi world, first getting into this world, kind of being astonished with what goes on in this world and what's accepted until now.
That's great. And so let's jump right into this, because I thought maybe you could start with discussing some of the struggles that investors experience when they get started with cryptocurrencies, going from the TradFi world to, this new modern digital world.
I think one of the biggest hurdles for most men and women coming into this space, especially if they have experience in the TradFi world, is taking that first step. And I'll give you a great analogy. Everybody hates working out, but when we're done, we love it. It's that really first step to head to the gym or go to your basement or do wherever you're exercising. I think with crypto or Web3 that you have such a fragmentation with regards to knowledge bases. And unfortunately, I think a major deterrent has been the spin of major nefarious activities going on in this world. However, when you juxtapose that with fiat currency, it's not even close. But the first step really, I believe, is for men and women that actually want to be involved, and I'll use myself as a litmus test, is taking that first step, which to me begins with educating yourself about it. And the good news is, this stuff can be really, really scary and intimidating and make you feel like you have no idea what you just read. But the reality is you don't really need to be a computer scientist. You don't need to be a cryptographer. You don't need to be a blockchain expert to get the cursory level understanding of just what is blockchain technology, what is distributed ledger technology. And once you get that under your feet, I think that kind of sets you on a course where you say, okay, now I kind of understand the technology. Does it make sense? If it does, then that's where typically investors, and that's exactly what happened with me after being a huge doubting Thomas, out of a huge naysayer. I started reading books. I started signing up for every industry email I could get my hands on. I went to YouTube. I met people on LinkedIn. And through this educational process, I finally found like this technology is literally going to change the world. And again, with my TradFi background, understanding that globally, 1 in 5, including here in the United States, 20% of the world is either unbanked or underbanked. So, we all know all the different things that blockchain is going to be applied to down the road. Obviously, it globbed on to financial services first. And again, for all these men and women around the world that live in economies where their currency has either massive depreciation, volatility, it's basic or hyperinflation, this is a game-changing event for these people's lives. And again, I think it all starts with that educational first step.
Yeah. And I think, you touched on so many points there. And I think a lot of people get nervous because it is a very different operating system, if you will, from traditional finance. You don't call a broker and make a trade. A lot of this is, the DIY, do it, you do DIY, the do it yourself, right? Most people and most platforms, you can't even call up customer service and get customer service support. And that's what I'm so interested, especially with what you're doing. I think it's a game changer even for the industry because, you guys actually provide that 24/7 customer support. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and how that will impact the industry, you think, in general, the growth of the cryptocurrency market.
And I think you hit the nail on the head on a couple points there. And the first point I want to mention is if we think about the current landscape today of cryptocurrency exchanges, make no mistake about it, they are all nothing more than do-it-yourself trading platforms. And for the men and women that can figure it out, they're okay. If you can't, you're pretty much locked out. But here's the biggest problem. Even if you can figure it out, you're the greatest technologists in the world, if you have a problem with your account, you can't log in, your balances are off, you can't buy, sell, send, receive, good luck on getting a hold of someone. Forget about a phone call. I mean, that's not even on the, and that's exactly why I started H2crypto. I had this really deep, heavy TradFi background. A part of my career, I'm not a smart guy, fine, but I did used to sell fixed income derivatives to central banks. And when I tried to just set up the account on exchange, had no idea what I was doing with them, sent them an email. This is 8 years ago. And guess what? I'm still waiting on my email to come back to me. And I started thinking about it. I said, well, wait a minute. Let's think about this for a minute. Because if someone were to set up a brokerage account or a bank account, and they actually sat down and went through the KYC process and funded their account, and as they're walking out the door, they tapped you on the shoulder and said, oh, by the way, if later on today or next week or next month or next year, your balances are off or you can't log in or you can't buy, sell, send, receive, there'll be nobody here for you. Is that okay? Like, no, it's not okay. Give me my money back. I'm not opening the account. But in the cryptocurrency exchange, that's just what we've been lulled into thinking is normal, is acceptable, is usual business practices. And it's not. It's absolutely not. If we're selling t-shirts online or doing something where we're not custodying people's money, maybe I could give it a pass. But when you're a fiduciary and you're custodying assets, that's a different story. And so, yes, I think that what we're doing is, I don't want to say revolutionary, it's evolutionary. It's to take us to the next step. Because the reality is a lot of people in Web3 don't realize this. I think we're too in the weeds. But the reality is no one in the world owns crypto. Even today, you're talking around 5% of global populace. And all the research indicates that the number one pain point preventing its mass and widespread adoption is its sheer complexity. So until men and women have a helping hand, a guiding hand, we don't provide investment advice, but just what is crypto? How do I set up my account? What is cold storage versus hot wallets? We're providing all the educational necessities for men and women around the world 24/7 that they know they can have someone there to instill trust and not have to worry about being ghosted or putting money on exchange and never hearing from them again. So I think it's absolutely vital. The research indicates, again, that's the main issue why people aren't in this space. And I think that just doing the right thing with regards to, hey, this is your money. We want to be there when you have questions, no matter what the question is. That's absolutely vital for the industry to truly kind of mature and start to lift off.
Well, that sounds like a great mission, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So helping people just learn is a fantastic part of what you're doing. At ICAN, one of the things we're focused on is regulatory barriers to people who want to access the capital markets. What have you found are the biggest regulatory challenges? And I'll just state the obvious that the landscape around crypto regulation is uneven, to put it mildly. But what have been your challenges in terms of regulatory barriers and issues?
I think it's the sheer ambiguity and not really knowing what is legal and legit and what is not. I know that the SEC has, they've been, I guess, okay about naming 68, 70 coins as, quote, securities. And so I think that for the exchanges, at least here in the US, that want to do the right thing, they just redact those pairs. And we have redacted those pairs. That hurts us, actually, because there's some very good projects and very good protocols that they have deemed securities. But I think until the US truly provides crystal clear regulatory clarity, it's a little bit of trying to walk on eggshells because you never really know. And what we try and do is we're constantly monitoring the market and the regulatory landscape, whether that's by looking at what peer groupers doing, what kind of Wells notices are being sent down the pike, what are they being sent down the pike for? A lot of it is because they aren't a registered broker dealer. Well, if you're not brokering securities, you don't really need to be registered as a broker dealer. I think that for whatever reason, some of the larger major exchanges, they have taken a slightly more antagonistic approach to how, and I get it, there's sheer frustration in this. This industry is now in year 15. I can say as far as the regulators go, at least here in the United States, nobody even thought about this stuff until maybe 24 months ago, plus or minus, or really start taking it seriously. And I think that now the genie is out of the box. I personally feel that they got caught flat-footed, not in the fact that they didn't know about it, not in the fact that they didn't, think it might take off. I think they never thought it would explode in the way it has. And now you have a $2 trillion asset class that's just sitting out there, greatly kind of unregulated. So we're trying to do everything. We're trying to position ourselves as this kinder, gentler, caring exchange. We don't custody our client's asset. We have a U.S. chartered trust company doing it. And so we have the 24/7 support. We don't have our own internal trading desk, so we can't trade against our clients. We can't front run their orders. We don't lend out their securities, or pardon me, their tokens. And so if we're doing all these things, that's why we're trying to sit back and look at whatever, guidance that is out there and follow it as much as we can, which is pretty much, that's how we're operating right now. We're really kind of following everything that we see and hear and read and get guidance from our attorneys as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that ambiguity you're talking about, of course, in this context, I think refers to the which crypto arrangements constitute investment contract securities. And obviously, people in the industry have been following that evolution for a long time. And one of the points we've made is, and not just us, but many people have made, is it's not helpful just to list tokens in complaints that the SEC contends are securities. What would be extremely helpful is to indicate what crypto arrangements, investment contracts, whatever, are not securities. And if you go back and look at the guidance from CorpFin on that, there just really isn't any since the no action letter in Pocketful of Quarters, I think was the name of one way back in 2017 or something. And even we've been following the Third Circuit proceedings that Coinbase has brought, and the hearing on that, the SEC begrudgingly and not very clearly seem to acknowledge that normal transactions of Bitcoin and ETH are not securities, but even that wasn't clear. So I think a little guidance on the outer limits of what is not a security would be helpful. And so I applaud your efforts to bring, some clarity to this through the business model that you have. So that's terrific.
I think ultimately that, again, there's this kind of turf war between the SEC and the CFTC to a certain degree over who should regulate it. And my personal take is if either one of those two regulates it, it should be probably the CFTC as far as I'm concerned, because they predominantly look at currencies as well as commodities, which to me is much more similar to crypto. But the real answer probably, and I know nobody's for even more bloated government and to add more agencies and bureaucracy, but there probably should be a digital asset regulatory body and have it with current modern thinkers. I think that a lot of the regulatory, when you think about the SEC and the CFTC, a lot of those rules and regulation go back into the 30s and 40s. And I've said this before, and so trying to apply those rules and laws to the crypto market would be akin to applying horse and buggy, street laws to our highway systems today in 2024. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's kind of where we are today. And I will say, look, I think that every day I'm reading more and more. Now both parties have done a 180 on crypto, which is great. And I see more and more people in Congress that are coming around and supporting it and getting behind it. And I'm hoping that whoever wins in a month from now, I think 2025 will be the year that the regulatory framework is really honed in on, I's dotted, T's crossed, to probably take effect in 2026.
Well, from your lips to Congress's ears, I do think getting a presidential election behind us will take some heat off, and maybe we will see some bipartisan
Yeah.
crypto version of the Jobs Act where actual work can get done without worrying about how you're going to affect some other political issues. So I hope you're right. And in the meantime, thank you for coming on the program. Thank you, Dara, as always. For everybody else, if you want more information on ICAN, it's icanlaw.org, and we'll see you on the next Capital Ideas.